Well, hello there. Ken Johannesson here with the second edition of Conversation Collage. Nice to have you aboard as we come to you on a sunny and hot day here in Wenatchee, Washington, the apple capital of the world and the buckle of the power belt of the great Northwest on planet Earth. That's what it said on the masthead of the local paper on July 21st, 1969, but more on that later. I say it's sunny and hot as we are producing this. It is 93 degrees outside and about 92 inside. So if I suddenly sound like I'm wilting on the vine, you'll understand. Hope you're doing well. Hope you enjoyed our first voyage into this, and we did so well, we thought, well, let's do it again. And so we've got some good interviews for you. I think we'll have a good time, and we hope you'll be with us for the duration here. We're going to start this time with electric cars. You might have noticed them, he says, reading the intro, in traffic, or seen the charging stations popping up everywhere from gas stations to grocery store parking lots. As a matter of fact, here where I live in Washington State, the Walmart people have announced in the last couple of weeks a drive to put all sorts of charging stations at their stores here in Washington State, maybe in your state or area as well. Anyway, sales of electric vehicles are up, and in response to their growing popularity, roughly 100 new EV models, electric vehicles, EVs, will hit the market by the year 2023. And we talked about what is driving consumer interest and the latest innovations making EVs easier than ever to own. We talked about all of that with Preston Roper, who is head of e-mobility at something called Enel X North America. We'll explain all of this as we go on. We caught up with him recently. Hello, Preston Roper. How are you?
Hey, I'm well, Ken. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. And where are you today?
Well, today I'm in New York City. Normally I'm in California, but we're here for the Formula E race.
Okay. All right. We'll talk about that just a little bit. But first, electric vehicles are becoming more and more popular. I understand, I think Washington State is like one of the most popular states for a certain model of electric vehicles that has gotten a lot of publicity. But, is that a trend across the country? Are we seeing electric vehicles pop up everywhere? Are they becoming more popular?
It is. Over the next year or two, we're going to see 100-plus new models hit the market, and that's an indicator of the fact that folks are really waking up. That certain company has really shaken up the market, and at this point, what people are learning is that the cars are faster, they're cheaper to operate than they've ever been, and they have pretty strong range, and basically covers everybody's day-to-day needs. Folks up in Seattle, I think, are particularly lucky in the fact that you've got a lot of clean energy up there with hydro, and then with more wind and so on coming on, and solar as well, you can really drive the cars clean as well as being very cost-effective.
As a matter of fact, where we're speaking right here, we have the lowest electric rates in the nation. Does that cause an effect? Does that cause an impact on electric utilities? How are they being impacted by all of this?
Yeah, it's a good question, and that's what our company focuses on, Enel. So we have what we call smart charging. My home product called JuiceBox basically can time the charging to when the most clean energy is available, so that hydro at night can go straight into the car. The other thing that we do is we minimize the time that charging is happening at peak. Costs for the utilities rise at peak energy usage, and we want to avoid that, because if it goes up for the utility, it's going to go up for the homeowner or for the business that's operating that electric truck.
So let's talk about here these electric vehicles. What's the latest when it comes to adoption of these?
Yeah, so it's really picking up. I mean, 100 years ago, the first horseless carriages were electric. Ford and Edison sat down and decided they were going to go gas. Turns out now we're flipping the switch back in the other direction, and really electric is the future. We're going to see 20 or 30 million just in the next couple of years on the road, 10 years or so of these EVs being sold just in the U.S. So a really, big uptick and a big swing and a massive change.
What gets in the way of people considering an electric vehicle? How are these being addressed?
Yeah, it's a good question. We wanted to find out the answer to that, so we did a survey. What we found is about 7 in 10 Americans aren't actually familiar with some of the improvements through EVs. So the fact, for instance, that they're very safe, the fact that they're cheaper to own and operate, and also people aren't familiar with sort of the range where they are today and the easily 250, 300 plus miles. And so that gets really a massive amount of, what is actually day-to-day driving needs. And then for those longer trips, there's also faster and faster charging. And that's, of course, one of the things that Anel focuses on and that my team is particularly zeroed in on.
Are prices on these cars, are they going to be coming down? Are they going to be maybe as affordable as gas-powered vehicles at some point?
Yeah, good point. And the next probably 2 to 3 years, so we're seeing, depending on who you speak with, the analysts saying by 2022, some earlier, some slightly later. But we've seen just in the last 5 years, battery costs have dropped down faster than most people had predicted. And that's showing up at the showroom, so to speak. And basically the costs now up front are very close to parity, but already today the cost to operate the cars is less. And that comes from the fact that you mentioned it yourself. You have, for instance, very low electricity costs where you are. Thankfully, you also have very clean energy, which I'm glad to hear about. But also because of the maintenance. EVs are much less complicated. The whole systems without the fuel pumps and the transmissions and without the filters and belts and all that stuff goes away. So instead of going to the shop every year, I used to drop, I'm sure on average, a couple grand every year just for maintenance. And instead of doing that, for oil changes, I've been driving EVs for several years, and literally the only thing I've paid for has been getting my tires rotated, maybe the wiper blades changed, and a little bit of wiper fluids put into the reservoir. So it's a real pleasure to not have that ongoing drain on my pocketbook, and that's why these EVs are really starting to take up. And that says nothing about how fun they are to drive. They get up and go, and they're quiet and very restful to actually be in.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, the Formula E race, let's talk about that a little bit. What's going on with this? And it's the only electric car race in the country going on right now?
Yeah, Formula E is based off of the Formula One format, so a closed circuit, very similar looking, cars. And my company, Anel, we're the sponsor, so we provide the charging infrastructure. This year, for the first time, they'll be able to run the entire race on one charge. That's through the improved charging that I talked about, and also the improved battery life and the range that now is available. So the cars are really, they get up and go. They're similar speeds as a traditional Formula One. And then they're really fun to watch, but without the fumes. Not quite as loud. They make this really fun, sort of futuristic sound, like a jet taking off or something. And I recommend it if you ever get a chance to visit. It's around the world, and the particular race was in New York City.
Is this going to be televised somehow?
Yep,
they
are televised. I couldn't tell you exactly on what channel, but for sure.
So look for the Formula E race somewhere on your local listings or something like that. So
exactly.
And it may be streamed somewhere too. So I'm sure.
Yep.
What else is going on when it comes to transportation? Because we've got electric cars, we've got apparently smart cars now, autonomous vehicles. It seems like this the whole idea of transportation is changing.
It is. The shared ownership model is a big thing that's happening. So fewer people may actually want to or be required to own a vehicle. They may use more shared. The autonomy you mentioned just a minute ago, the vehicles are learning to drive themselves and basically to get around and take, at minimum, some of the pressure off of the drivers. You still have to be alert. You still have to be there. But it's really easy to drive. And then I mentioned smart charging before. That's a huge thing to help the utilities to keep the cost down. And then also fleets. I touched on that, just the cost for that you have for as a driving your own personal car. The same thing is true if you're operating a fleet of buses or trucks, garbage trucks or delivery trucks or long range. You want to keep the cost down. And so that's a big change. So we just want to make sure all the technology is there and that the folks can do that in an efficient and cost-effective manner.
Are local transit authority here, is one of the leaders in electric vehicles and has actually 10 electric buses on order and has the world's first built into the ground charger, 200 kilovolt charger, where the bus just kind of lowers itself down onto it and it charges on that. It has the first one in the world.
Yeah,
So,
it's a beautiful thing. You're talking about another piece of technology that's, basically wireless charging. So that's actually coming. It's another great technology development. But we're seeing that bus. My company, we've done big deployments with buses around the world, including Chile, for instance, South America, and in Europe. But that's a huge thing. It's a pleasure to be on the street and to see these things go without sucking in the fumes that they're otherwise emitting with a diesel engine. And they're quiet, too. So if they're out in their neighborhood picking up garbage or dropping people off, they're super quiet, and it's a nice experience. So those are some of the benefits, and that's what's coming. In
the last couple minutes here, I want to ask about the government. Is the government getting in the way of electric vehicle adoption?
So are they getting in the way? I think I wouldn't say so. And to be honest, the product, the EVs are so good. It's such a better experience because of the cost, because of the acceleration, the lower maintenance. I think they're going to happen regardless of any sort of impediments that might be put in place by the government. But we're actually seeing in a lot of places, you're seeing folks who are actually thinking forward. They realize that EVs are actually great because EVs not only help make the environment better, but in many cases, we manufacture a lot of our product in California, and the energy that we put into the cars, comes from solar and wind, and those are local jobs as well. So there's really a great opportunity for local governments to incentivize. The utilities are on board with this. And we see people in different regions, different government entities supporting both the charging stations, the cars, but then also installation to make it really cost-effective.
I would think that if you really wanted to have the price of these vehicles go down and really sell the government, and I'm saying the federal government and also governments across the country, need to convert their fleets to electric vehicles.
They can and should be, and there's actually some really great American companies who are producing those vehicles, so it's just all the better, and it'll be good to see the government get behind that.
Yeah, good deal. Anything else we need to know that we have missed?
Well, you didn't ask me about my website, which is nlx.com, so I got to be able to put in a little plug.
Absolutely.
In case, folks want to learn more, so that's enelx.com. And then I just can't repeat it enough. They're fun to drive and low cost, so you can do the right thing for the environment while you also do the right thing for your pocketbook. And just enjoy the vehicles. And with the range we've got out there now of a couple hundred miles and fast charging that's available, you'll be in good hands in electric.
That website again is enelx.com.
You got it. Thanks so much.
Preston Roper, thank you very much. Best to you in New York, and good luck with the race.
Thank you, Ken.
Preston Roper there, General Manager, North America, e-mobility for Enelx, E-N-E-L-X. And if you want to check out their website, it's enelx.com. When I started this edition of the podcast, I said we were in the apple capital of the world and the buckle of the power belt of the great Northwest on planet Earth. And I mentioned that this came from the masthead of our local newspaper, which is called the Wenatchee Daily World. Story behind this. Some years ago when I was working at a radio station, somebody came to the station holding this and said, we have this, we've kept this all these years. We don't want it anymore. It's yours. And they gave this to me. This was the entire front section of the Daily World of Monday, July 21st, 1969. And since we've passed the 50th anniversary of that moon landing, it's still on a lot of people's minds. On the front page of the July 21st, 1969 edition, at the very bottom, at the bottom of the front page, there's an article that says, "This is the way it was on Earth." And it goes through a number of things as to what was happening in the world on that day or near that